Sisters. And a reminder just to switch your mobile phones off again, please. Put them on silent. That'd be great. Thank you. All right, we'll give it to Dr. Ramirez for our second presentation tonight.
They need to switch my screen in the back.
Okay, just a screen there, Josh.
There it is.
There we go. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Well, we have plenty to cover, so let's move along. I'm going to be citing some of my research. Yeah, the research you find at their ResearchGate, and also my tweets you also find there. So let's talk about stopping diabetes and its cousins. Okay. The cousins of diabetes and diabetes are called the four killers. And this is something called the metabolic syndrome. Is the same problem that represents in four different ways. Those four different ways are obesity and overweight, triglycerides and cholesterol, insulin resistance and diabetes, and high blood pressure. In fact, if you have one of these things and you keep doing what you have been doing, you very soon are going to collect 2, 3, and the 4 of them, I guarantee you, because they work together. In fact, this metabolic syndrome, it was one of the factors why in the Western world we got hit so badly by this COVID-19. Notice this. Obesity worsened outcomes from COVID-19. We know that people that had excess body weight were at increased risk for that type of severe type of COVID-19. In fact, this is where I had little disagreements in some places how they were dealing with this, people like that with metabolic syndrome, those are the ones they urgently needed quarantine because they were at very high risk of severe COVID-19. Notice this one. People with diabetes are more likely to have serious complications for COVID-19. Again, the metabolic syndrome and this COVID-19. This other one also showing that the cholesterols had a significant association with COVID-19 severity and mortality. Again, another one of those metabolic syndrome things. And this other one, if you have high blood pressure, it's a good idea to take extra care to protect yourself during coronavirus outbreak. There's a possibility that having high blood pressure might put you at greater risk for severe illness and death. See, again, every single one of those factors with the metabolic syndrome made this COVID-19 worse. Another factor, the social factor. Notice this interesting study. Loneliness and immunometabolic syndrome. Loneliness can increase mental and metabolic disorders. So the fact that you disconnect from one another actually increases your risk for diabetes. So we have been talking about these Marshall Islands. Marshall Islands, what ended up happening to them, a place where they didn't have diabetes, a place where diabetes didn't exist. Americans tested a bomb there, a few bombs affected with radiation the people sued the American government paid them a bunch of money, and today the Marshall Islands has one of the highest rates of diabetes in the world. In fact, it is estimated that 50% of the whole population there above the age of 35 has type 2 diabetes. And between 90 to 95% of all the adults have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. Half of the surgeries in that island are done because of amputations due to diabetes. And the funny thing is that 70 years ago, diabetes was unknown there. People there were slim, physically active, and they had long lives. So, I'm very happy that today we have those glucometers, those things you poke the finger and then we put you in the little machine. Because as you can see, this is a photo of a doctor tasting some urine. What are they tasting for? Sugar. In fact, this is the way that they used to do the diagnosis. Or they used to pee next to a place where they had ants. And what were they expecting? If the ants came, we knew that was diabetes. Aren't you glad for the glucometer? We don't need to do that anymore, the doctors. So the reason why that happens is that when the glucose is too high in the body starts dumping a lot of that excess glucose on the urine. And the way that we measure things, I think you guys have different numbers here. You have the European numbers here. When you have that high glucose at least 2 times, that's how we make the diagnosis. Now, the biggest problem is that the symptoms for diabetes are very diverse. Some people, it's more the fatigue, the fact that you have so much sugar circulating in your body is going to call you to drink a bunch of water so you can dilute that excess glucose in your body. Also, because you're drinking so much liquids, you're going to be urinating quite a bit. And because you have all this glucose, yet you cannot use it, what your body starts doing starts literally destroying your body in order to survive. And that's why the person starts getting thin, because of that factor. And sometimes the first symptom is that they pass out and take him to the doctor. Check the glucose. Man, the glucose is all over the place. So why do people get this diabetes? Well, there's a genetic factor there. There's actually some scientists that propose that diabetes is actually a protection mechanism of your body. See, this is the way that it works. There's a genetic factor. Some people, just a little bit of weight, that's enough to develop diabetes. For other people, you have to gain significant amount of weight for the diabetes to take place. But in both of them, this is what happens. As you gain weight, your body knows that you are gaining weight because of insulin. Insulin is one of the factors that helps you gain weight. When you eat excess calories, it literally takes hours to gain weight. So your body goes and knocks on the door with the insulin to the fat cells and tell them, look, can you keep this energy? I'll come back for it later. But sometimes that later never comes. And then the person starts gaining weight. As the weight gain starts to become more severe, the body says, you know what? I'm tired from this insulin making me gain weight. I'm going to start ignoring that insulin. That's what we call that insulin resistance. Because it means that when the insulin comes and knocks at your door of your fat cell to tell them, look, I have more energy here, I need you to store this, the body says, I'm not gonna be obeying you. So what the pancreas does, this happens before you got diabetes, starts pumping a bunch of extra insulin to literally shout to the fat cell so the fat cell can continue gaining the extra weight. And there comes a point in which the weight has been significant and they are ignoring so much the insulin. That's when we poke your finger and we start seeing that glucose is higher than normal. And that's when we start making the diagnosis first of pre-diabetes. If things are not corrected, then this is going to become diabetes. Now, this is done to protect you from gaining weight. But today, many times what happens, they diagnose you as diabetic, they give you medication. The medication makes the insulin to continue to work normally. So now you continue in the process of continuing to gain weight and become more diabetic in the process. So, what was the cause of the problem? Gaining weight. What may be the potential solution to the problem? Losing weight. You need to start going back so that you let your pancreas rest. Now, this is what happens. As you become diabetic, your pancreas is becoming damaged by the day and the week. As you continue being diabetic, you're damaging your pancreas. And if you don't make the changes ASAP, you have the risk of damaging your pancreas permanently, and then we cannot reverse that diabetes anymore. So we need to start acting as soon as possible before our pancreas gets damaged. And here you can see in this study very clearly. The white part of things, that is fat in the abdominal cavity. Notice that the pattern is very clear. People with diabetes have too much of that fat in the abdominal cavity. Another factor that happens with diabetes is that naturally we have a little bit of fat inside our cells. But when you're gaining weight, you're also gaining weight inside the cells of your muscle. And when you gain too much fat inside the cells, what you end up doing, you end up messing around with the mechanism that absorbs that glucose inside your body. And that's why the insulin resistance and so forth. So the problem of having too high glucose is that your body is going to try to compensate with high levels of insulin. And that combination of high glucose and high insulin causes your triglycerides to go up, causes your cells to start being stuck with glucose because there's too much glucose circulating. So when that insulin goes up, your cholesterol goes up, your blood pressure goes up, and this is something worrisome. See, insulin is something that makes things grow. That's why you gain weight with the insulin. But it also makes the cancer cells grow more, which that's not good. I don't want to put more gasoline on the cancer cells. Every day, every single one of us generates cancer cells. But in the presence of high levels of insulin, what my body does, it makes those cancer cells grow faster. And that's why it's dangerous, because you can increase your risk of cancer. And it stimulates the central obesity. As I told you, stimulates the fat cells to capture that excess energy, and that's why they grow. So naturally, there's a certain amount of sugar that gets stuck to your cells. But in the case of high glucose in the sugar, what happens is that now those excess glucose start to get stuck to everything, including your blood vessels. And that stimulates atherosclerosis. And that's why we always say that by definition, a diabetic is a heart patient, by definition, because that glucose starts stimulating that atherosclerosis faster than what it should. So what should we do? Well, first thing, we need to start eating low glycemic foods. Low glycemic foods are foods that when I eat them, they enter my body slowly. But high glycemic foods are the opposite. When I eat them, they enter my body too fast. So things like snack foods, fast foods, pastries, sweets, sodas, white bread, white rice, refined carbohydrates, and so forth. Compare to low glycemic foods like fresh fruits and vegetables, legumes, peas, beans, garbanzos, soy, tofu, nuts, whole grain bread, foods that have good amount of protein and healthy fats. These are the types of foods I have to prefer. Now, let's go ahead and put numbers to it. So the way this chart works is that we use white bread as the guideline. So white bread, we assign a 100. That's too high. For a diabetic, that's not the best food. Now, look for sugar. What number does sugar has? So white bread is even worse than sugar, you know? So what you need to be shooting for about 60 or less. So you don't have to memorize this table and so forth. You just have to memorize the principle. Here's the principle. Foods that have been cooked for a long time have a high glycemic index. So very simple, the principle. For example, look for Cheerios or cornflakes. What number cornflakes has? 120. Why does it have 120? Well, because in order to make cornflakes, I have to get that corn and boil and boil and boil and boil that for a long time, and that makes that glycemic index go up. Same story with instant rice. What number does it have? 129. Same story. That rice, they boil it and boil it and boil it and boil it, then they dehydrate it and put it in a package. You know, that's why it has such high glycemic index. Now, notice the number for broccoli. What's the number? Fantastic. Now, it's not only broccoli, any green vegetable is going to have very low glycemic index. That's why the diabetic patient needs to fill half their plate with raw vegetables. In fact, if you want to control yourself, you're a little bit out of control with your diabetes, 3/4 of your plate, green vegetables. By eating that very low glycemic food, you actually feel yourself, you know, you feel that you ate something, yet you don't have that challenge. Notice peanuts and soybeans, many of the beans have that low glycemic index. So there's people that say, oh, everything is bad. No, everything is not bad. You know, what we need to do, we need to start focusing on that low glycemic food. Another thing, can you eat potatoes and can you eat sweet potatoes? Yes, you can. But don't eat them by themselves. Eat them together with legumes. Eat them with the lentils. Eat them with the beans. Eat them with the chickpeas. Eat them with the salad. Once you mix these things in your stomach, the glycemic index stays nice and low. And another principle, the number one enemy of the diabetic is not sugar. Sugar is not the best for the diabetic, but the number one enemy of the diabetic is fat. That is what causes insulin resistance to increase. Because I told you, when the fat accumulates inside the cells, that creates insulin resistance. So somebody that wants to control the diabetes needs to stop using oil. Doctor, including olive oil? Yes, including olive oil, okay? No oils. Just Spam, the spray, so your food doesn't get stuck in your food. That's as much oil as you're gonna use. No fried food. It's too high fat. That is what you need to be doing to start controlling your diabetes and reversing it. And I mentioned the clinical case. That's exactly what we did with this patient. So our recipe was first 3 days fasting and then switching him to a 2 meals a day program. He was eating just 2 times a day and eating only plants, composing of fresh fruit as a whole. No juicing. Juices are not good for your diabetes. You break down the fiber and increase the glycemic index. Legumes. At every meal, we serve them legumes, okay? Either beans, either lentils, chickpeas, and so forth. Whole grains, and nuts and vegetables. That's what his diet has been consistent, and you saw complete reversal of his metabolic syndrome. So, same story happened with blood pressure, as I mentioned to you. So, we have 2 ways of trying to decrease the fat of the body. This is what 3,500 calories look like. This is 1 pound of fat, how it looks like. Now, there's 2 ways of dealing with this. One, you can try to decrease this only by exercise. Well, you better have very good physical fitness because you're going to need 4 or 5 hours of exercise a day. Okay? Now, most people don't do that, isn't it? Unless you're like a professional triathlonist or something like that, you know. So it's possible to lose that fat with exercise, but that's how much exercise you need. In my opinion, a better strategy is to change what you are eating. By switching to that whole food plant-based diet, you're naturally decreasing the amount of calories and you're not suffering. See, that's the problem with the methods that you suffer. Oh, you're just gonna eat a small portion of this and blah, blah, blah. And here you are all hungry, you know, the whole day, you know. How long can you be hungry for? Man, after 2 weeks, you say, you know what, forget it, I'm not following this. And of course, it doesn't work. If you want to keep eating your animal products and so forth and still lose weight, it doesn't work. It's too much fat, too many calories, and you will be destined to be a diabetic for the rest of your days. Instead, we need to tackle the problem at the root and return to a whole food plant-based diet. Let me show you this approach from the Marshall Islands. I have some friends that went there to do an excellent intervention. And look what the Marshall Island people eat. Remember, it's the one I told you, the highest rate of diabetes in the world. Notice how everything is a high glycemic, high fat food. You know, white rice, white bread, donuts and white flour, favorite stuff, this Spam. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with the Spam. You know, this canned processed pig meat, chicken. You know, too much fat, too many calories. Ramen noodles, sodas, fish, meat, and salty snacks. I mean, every single thing they are eating explains why we have such a huge problem with diabetes in the Marshall Islands. So look at this. 75% of all the calories in the Marshall Islands is processed junk food, you know. And 20% animal products, which naturally are too high in fat, and only 5% plant foods. That explains why this is such a crisis in that island with so much diabetes. So some of us are diabetics by design. So what my friends did, they went and helped change the lifestyle of these people. And they did a nice program so that they could start absorbing those changes, these islanders. And the results were phenomenal. It was great to see what happens. And the problem is that this metabolic syndrome starts impacting all kinds of things. Look at this interesting study that came out recently. How having metabolic syndrome damages your sperm. And this damaged sperm, you know, you can, end up causing problems to that baby and so forth because of the damage that you're causing to the DNA and so forth. And infertility, you know, because many times the infertile sperm is not going to be able to, fertilize the egg and so forth. So in order to conquer this metabolic syndrome monster, what we need to do, we need to tackle everything, you know. And how are we going to do that? Well, by following that whole food, plant-based diet. And this whole food, plant-based diet is something that we have to do one step at a time. So we need to tackle the obesity, we need to tackle the overweight, we need to tackle the lack of sleep, we need to change the gut flora by switching to that healthy diet. We need to put temperance in our diet, not eating in excess and so forth. And that's going to have an impact at the level of the hormones and so forth. So what we need to eat? Whole food, plant-based diet. That's going to be the first things we need to start changing. And you don't need to go poor. Some people think that, if I switch to a plant-based diet, I'm going to go poor and so forth. That's not true. You actually save more money. What's cheaper? 1 kilo of beans or 1 kilo of beef? What's cheaper? How many people eat with 1 kilo of beans? Man, you feed a bunch of people. How many people eat with 1 kilo of beef? Only few people can eat with that. So it's much more efficient, you know. So you need to go back to your local foods, the things that are available on season and so forth. You know, if something is too expensive, that doesn't mean you have to eat it, you know. So go ahead and start scheduling things. And here, I kind of semi-translated this, but let me tell you what it is. This is something called caloric density. You can see it here. So here is the very key of why we need those changes. See, there's foods that naturally have a bunch of calories. I need to avoid those foods because those foods naturally make me gain weight. So what's there in the number one thing there? What do you see there? What did I tell you about oil? Goodbye, If you're diabetic, you need to eliminate oil. It doesn't matter if it's grapeseed oil or avocado oil or the most expensive oil in the market, still is oil, is going to make you gain weight. By gaining weight, you are going to become more insulin resistant. So you need to cut down all the oils. Then you need to be careful with the nuts and seeds because they are high-calorie foods. Then junk food, and then refined carbohydrates. So you can see that I need to start working at eating from here on. I need to eat my legumes, I need to eat unrefined cereals, I need to eat fruits, and I need to eat vegetables. Most of the food that I eat needs to be from here, okay? Because if you keep going on that direction, you're going to be diabetic for the rest of your days. But how we reverse diabetes? By moving into this direction. Notice this interesting study. This just came out also a few weeks ago. Drinking 1 or 2 Coca-Colas a day increases the risk of diabetes by more than 20%. I'm telling you, these things are not good for you. It's too many calories. Also, caffeine makes you more diabetic. That's one of the reasons why you also have to cut down the caffeine if you want to reverse the metabolic syndrome. So, what we do, we need to go back to the natural foods. Even if you come from different places of the world, there's usually some good whole foods there. So try to adapt to what you're used to. Think about how can I have a more wholesome, natural type of diet. 2, create what is called a negative energy balance. So if you have excess body weight, you need to have, by the end of the day, you need to have burned more calories than what you ate. So what we do, by switching to that whole food diet, what I'm eating less calories, and then you complement this with exercise, man, that starts becoming fantastic because then you're burning more calories than what you're taking, and naturally your body is going to start losing that weight. 3, emphasize high nutrient density foods. Foods that when you eat them, you're eating a lot of nutrition with them. Things like legumes, they're loaded with good nutrition. Things like whole cereals, things like fruit, things like vegetables. Instead of processed junk like this Coca-Cola that I just showed you. It's a bunch of calories, lots of sugar, and zero nutrition that you're drinking there. 4, avoid those refined carbohydrates. And you can see them here, every single one of them. These refined carbohydrates stimulate the pancreas to release a bunch of insulin, and as I told you, if you increase the insulin, you stimulate gaining weight in your body. And eat real food, real food that satisfies you, real food that doesn't cause those crazy, high glucose waves in your body. So, how am I going to control that fasting glucose? By focusing on non-starchy vegetables and beans. That is one of the best things. And see, not all the grains are good, depending on how much, processing took place. For example, the wheat, the berries, those are excellent. You know, you can even cook them. Go on the internet and find, you know, how you cook that. You can make salads and all kinds of things. So the grain itself, sometimes just smash a little bit. You can do some recipes like that. That's very good. Then when you start breaking that grain, that's the second grade of, of the processing stage. That still is good. You know, you can also use that. But then I start getting in trouble as I start going down. Now shredded wheat, making it into flour, and then the worst one is when you puff the whole grain like this. This thing has very high glycemic index. So you need to watch out. You know, one challenge here is those cereals for breakfast that you eat in the morning. I mean, when you go to the section where they have them, I mean, I can tell you 97% of them are not good for you. You're just paying for expensive sugar. You know, that's basically what you're doing. 6, aim for high fiber. So you need to be eating at least 35 grams of fiber a day. Do your mathematics. Check how much fiber you are eating a day and see how close you get to the 35. You will be surprised. There's people that are eating only 5, 8 grams of fiber a day. No wonder they go to the restroom for an hour, you know, because just the system just doesn't work without the proper amount of fiber. So at least 10 grams per each meal. And you can aim for that by eating healthy. You know, a soup of lentils, a nice salad with wheat berries, a nice salad with vegetables, and so forth. And watch out for total fat, okay? As I mentioned to you, that coconut oil, that stuff is not good for you. I know that some of you, you know, that's the oil that you grew up and so forth, but that is not a good oil. That is too saturated. You can eat the coconut the way that God made it, like here in your mouth. That's where you make your oil, okay, by chewing that coconut. But don't buy the coconut. In the Marshall Islands, 50 to 60% of the calories are coming from coconut. That's too much, and that's going to have problems. Also, make sure you're eating what I tell my patients, the rainbow. Notice that there's fruits and vegetables that are white, some are yellow, some are red, some are orange, some are purple, some are black. You have to eat the whole rainbow because each shade has different benefits. And avoid things that are oxidants. One of the main things how people oxidize their food is by frying it. Fried food is not good for you. Fried food is what's going to cause your stones in your gallbladder, and you're going to need a surgery to fix that. Why do you want to have that? You know, there's absolutely no need for that. Also, be careful with the foods that are too processed and so forth. They're usually very high oxidant foods. And also watch for hidden sodium. You know, put in some salt, that's fine on your food, not too much, you know, but just enough so that you have some flavor. But some people are not aware that many other foods, especially processed foods, have too much sodium. Every single one of these foods that you see there in the screen are actually high sodium foods. And see, you have a pump inside your body that makes energy. That pump, in order to function efficiently, you need a little bit of sodium and a bunch of potassium. So when I eat too much sodium, I mess around with that pump and my energy levels actually decrease secondary to that. And make sure you cut down on caffeine. Let me tell you why. Caffeine, we find it on the famous green tea, on coffee, on chocolate, some pain relievers, and some sodas. They did this experiment with this spider. They extracted the caffeine, the equivalent of 2 cups of coffee. And then before they started the experiment, they put the spider to make its normal spider web. And then they injected the equivalent of caffeine to 2 cups of coffee, of course adjusted to the size of the spider. And then they put the spider to make its normal spider web. This is what it made. After 48 hours, this is what it made. It took 96 hours to make its normal spider web. As it says in this sign that I found in a store, drink coffee, do stupid things faster with more energy. Because of the frontal lobe suppression that it happens when you are under the effects of coffee, you're actually more likely to do things that are not right. Coffee blocks your melatonin. Remember how we're saying how important melatonin is? That's why people that use caffeine on a regular basis age faster than does people that don't, because you're cutting down your melatonin every night. It actually makes you more likely to fall into depression, fatigue, hostility. It messes your digestive tract. There's a special door we have in the top of our stomach that's called a sphincter, and caffeine relaxes that door, making your food more likely to start going up your esophagus. What do you get when that happens? What's the word? Heartburn. And that heartburn, if you keep doing that, you can end up changing the cells in your esophagus, and you can end up with something nasty like esophageal cancer. It also damages the layer that protects the stomach, therefore increasing the risk for stomach ulcers. It also elevates your blood pressure, and it throws away from your body calcium, iron, and your vitamin Bs. When you're drinking caffeine, your body dumps these nutrients. So what were they feeding these patients in the Marshall Islands in order to reverse their diabetes? Look at their breakfast, Doesn't this look good, So you have, some whole grains there. You can eat something salty. There's nothing wrong with that, to eat some beans, some lentils, and so forth. Some people like that. That's completely fine. Some whole fruit, some whole grains, and so forth. This is what they were eating for lunch, a nice, soup based on legumes, some salads, and so forth. And then for dinner, some tofu, loaf, again, another soup. Watch out for the soups made based on creams and so forth. Those tend to be more high caloric soups. Prefer more a soup, more based on water. Salad, some beans, and so forth. So what else were they doing? They're doing plenty of exercise. They were doing some cooking classes so they could learn, how to cook these healthy foods. And they even taught them how to shop. These people don't know how to shop. And they end up, buying the wrong types of foods. See, because if you buy it, it's more likely you're going to fall into temptation. So don't buy the wrong types of food. You increase your risk of falling down that. Also, another complaint I get for some patients is like, but doctor, my children don't like this food. Well, I tell them, who buys the food in your home? As the saying says, he who has the gold has the rules. So you guys are the ones that dictate what are your children going to eat. Apart, you want to have unhealthy children for the rest of their lives. So your choices are actually affecting your children big time because you're educating them. Once they leave home, they're going to copy what you're eating. That's what they're going to be copying later on. So don't you want to have, healthy, long-living children? So make sure that you make that change as a family. And again, focus on the affordable products. If something is too expensive, don't buy it, Buy the things that are on season and available. Also, another thing you can do, teaching to garden. Especially here in Australia, you guys have wonderful weather here. You can grow all kinds of things. And you don't need to start, an operation of an acre or hectare long and so forth. Just a few pots that you can start planting, some tomatoes or something. That's something that can bring, some healthy produce to your household. And the results were fantastic. The patients started reporting how the pains in their joints started to go away, how their sleep started to improve dramatically, how their energy started to increase, how the constipation they've been dealing for a long time, it was no longer there, and even how their mind started working better because, when you switch your lifestyle, the blood flow to the brain is going to improve, and that's going to make you feel better. And the fasting glucose goes down, and the hemoglobin A1C goes down, and the weight goes down, and the cholesterol goes down, and the blood pressure goes down. And the last one, that is the inflammation. It starts also going down, decreasing the risk of cancer and many other diseases in the long term. So as you can see, those people that were committed and continue doing those changes in the long term, those were the ones that were able to reverse the disease and had the best results and so forth. So on one of the islands of the Marshall Islands, the average was a decrease of 119 of their glucose, while on the other island was an average of 50, which is also very, very good. So you can see, we can do something for diabetes, and we should start doing something ASAP. Don't delay because your pancreas is getting damaged by the day, and shoot for that, healthy lifestyle so that we can conquer this disease forever. Thank you very much. And Pastor, the time is yours.
All right, I heard everyone laugh when Dr. Ramirez talked about the steak. Who's having 1 kilo steaks out there? Okay. I just thought we may take a few questions. Any questions for Dr. Ramirez based on what what he shared with us this evening? Okay, we've got one there. Okay. We've got the microphone coming to you, and I'll give you the floor.
Thank you for tonight. Very informative. Just a question in regards to vegetables.
Yes.
When we cook them, are we going to eat vegetables? Do we need to cook them all the way? Or do you have like a carrot? Do you eat it raw?
That's right.
Where do you get the nutrients from? How?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So you actually get benefits from both. When I cook my vegetables, I actually break some of the cells and some of the nutrients are actually released. So you should have a combination of both. But as I mentioned to you, if it's cooked for too long, you actually start increasing that glycemic index. So if your goal is to lose weight, if your goal is to control the diabetes, I need to have much more raw vegetables than cooked vegetables. But it's okay to eat some cooked vegetables, no problem. Just keep that ratio in mind. And what is your final goal? Okay.
Dried fruit, do we need to steer clear of it?
Which one?
Dried fruit, like prunes, dried apricots, things like that.
That's right. Yeah, no, I mean, you can eat them, you can eat those things. In fact, the foods that grow on cold weather tend to have lower glycemic index as a general rule. So use your neighbors here, the New Zealanders, whatever grows in the South Island, that's, if it grows there, it probably is going to have actually quite nice and low glycemic index. So yes, you can use this type of fruits. Now, if it's dry fruit, the challenge with that is that you start concentrating the energy in that. So for the diabetic, for the person that is trying to lose weight, dry fruit is not the best for you because you're eating too many calories. And just think about it. For example, a dehydrated apple. How much dehydrated apple can you eat? Man, you can eat a bag like that. I mean, how many apples in its natural state can you eat? See the problem. Because those things are very easy, boom, 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 and then you get a bunch of calories, and then you got yourself in trouble. So if your goal is to lose weight and so forth, be careful with that dry fruit. If you're a very high energy person training for the next marathon and so forth, well, it would be a good idea to add some dry fruit to your regimen and so forth. So watch out for that.
Can you tell us about lectin resistance, please?
About what?
Lectin resistance?
That's right. Lectin resistance is a quakery that is around on the internet. It's a quack, the guy that is talking about those lectins. What his goal is to sell you some supplements. And all the stuff that he is sharing is actually not scientific. In fact, his book, where he is supposed to be showing the evidence and so forth, if you go and open his book, where he is supposed to give in support to his idea through science, it's empty. The research is not there. So watch out for that. There's an excellent video. If you want to know more about it, go to the website Nutrition Facts, facts as in F-A-C-T-S, nutritionfacts.org, and put there lectins. You will see a little short clips there, 3 to 5 minutes long, explaining the science, why these things are not the big deal that some in the internet, try to make it sound like and so forth.
I had the test done and it showed that I do have leptin resistance. Oh, sorry, leptin, I should have said, leptin.
Leptin, okay, you're with the P, okay, not with the
Sorry,
C.
I made a mistake.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, if you have some leptin resistance, the recipe is actually quite similar, okay, with the metabolic syndrome. So people with that type of problem, by switching to that whole food, plant-based diet, by starting to lose weight and so forth, the body starts becoming sensitive again. So yes, it's a similar problem, root problem that we attacked in the same way. Okay.
Okay, thank you, doctor. It's really amazing. There's one question about people who has a let's say sensitive stomach. So, for example, people are coming out of prolonged fasting, or people
Yes.
like babies and things like that. Do you have a general guideline of like what kind of foods are more easier to digest for
Yeah.
those weak stomachs? Thank you.
That's right. Yeah. So for those people that are weak in their stomach, the point is that you want to start introducing little by little food. So you want to start, favoring fruits and vegetables. And then once the body starts getting used to that, then you start adding the legumes and so forth. I personally don't like those long fastings. I actually don't recommend that. Those long fastings actually damage your muscles. Your body starts destroying your muscle in order for you to survive. I'm not against fasting. If you want to fast, 2-3 days, that's completely fine. But those people, that fast a week or 2 weeks and stuff like that, that stuff is not healthy. I prefer you eat, and you full yourself with the whole foods. In that way, you're able to lose weight and enjoy the process as you do it. That's the beauty of that approach. Somebody changed their mind.
Yeah, hi. I just want to know, for the diabetics that use like products like stevia and sugarine and honey,
That's right.
so rather than using raw sugar,
That's right.
so what's the benefit then for those
Yes.
diabetics? Because
Well,
that's what
yeah.
doctors usually
The
prescribe.
question is, why are you using those sweeteners? The fact that the person is using those sweeteners tells me that they're not depending on the whole foods. So the research is coming out. I actually have quite a bit there on my Twitter, that many of those artificial sweeteners end up messing around your microbiota. So it is not the best things. Among the best ones to use, you could use a little bit of agave nectar. That's one potential option, and so forth. Honey is too concentrated. Even the Bible says a little bit of honey is good for you, says the Bible. Notice the a little bit there. I've seen people, they serve a fruit salad and they ruin it with a bunch of honey. You just ruin your salad. You just added a bunch of calories to your salad. So we need to retrain our taste buds, so our taste buds are not used to so high, sugary type of foods, so our taste buds can get used to more the natural flavors and so forth. So instead, fruit and so forth, as long as you don't, blend your fruit and juice your fruit and so forth, that's the best thing, for your taste buds.
Yeah, hi, doctor. So we hear that coconut oil is not good to consume. How about, would that also be the same as it being used on the skin or in your hair? Yeah, just from the islands, that's what we usually do. Is that also not recommended as well?
I didn't hear that part. If you use what part of the coconut?
So coconut oil, we all, as a Pacific Islander, we use it on our hair or as a moisturizer.
Oh, yeah.
Would that be something
No, that's
that...
completely fine. You can use it, for your hair, for your skin, and so forth.
Yeah.
That's completely fine. It's just when we eat them,
Consume
In fact,
it,
in the
okay.
old days, what they would do in the islands, before we had all the machinery and engineering to make coconut oil, they would shred the coconut oil and then squeeze it and so forth. That's fine, that process, But the problem is when I put it on a machine and the machine removes all the fiber, all the nutrients and gives you the concentrated fat, that's when you get in trouble. You know, that's the type of oil that we don't want. But doctor, what about the extra virgin? And it's the same story. It's the same amount of very highly caloric food.
Is olive oil bad only if you cook it, you heat it up, or you just eat it like that?
It depends. So olive oil, if you have excess body weight, is not the best for you. Now in the Bible, they mention quite a bit olive oil. Have you read? But how did they live in the time of the Bible? Man, they had to carry all kinds of weight. They had to work hard on the fields to cultivate their food. There was no public transport. You had to walk, kilometers and kilometers. There was no running water. You had to go and walk, with your container there to go and grab some water. There was no gas, no electricity, so you had to cut with the axe, the piece of tree and then bring it home and cook it. Man, it was hours and hours of exercise that the people had to do just to survive. So olive oil was a wonderful way of providing a bunch of calories for these people to survive. But today, we are too sedentary. We don't move much. And that combined with that excess calories is no good. So no, you know what I'm talking about? If your goal is to lose weight, if you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes and so forth, you need to cut down every form of free oil, including olive oil, because it's too many calories, So you're going to have, impairing the losing of the weight and so forth. So it's not necessarily the cooked one. Also, the raw one would be problematic for the people with metabolic syndrome.
Thank you for clarifying that. So I love my olive oils.
I just want to ask about herbal teas. You mentioned about some people recommend green tea.
That's
but
right.
From what you have presented, it would mean that it's got a lot of caffeine.
That's right.
So what's your opinion on herbal teas in alleviating some of these conditions?
Yeah, those herbal teas, they're good. Your mint, your lemon balm, your chamomile, and all those are completely fine. The problem is the issue with the green tea. Let me tell you about the green tea. I've been to Africa many times, especially Tanzania and Kenya. They cultivate quite a bit of tea there. And if you observe these people that work there, in fact, males don't work there, it's females, the ones that usually work there, they have a stick because the green tea plant is very special. They smack the plant and then they take the leaves. Why are they doing that? Because the green tea plant has a very interesting defense mechanism. When an animal comes to start eating the green tea plant, the green tea plant starts secreting a bunch of toxic substances in the leaves, and then the animal, when it tries to eat that, the famous tannins that are in the green tea. When the animal eats that, they say, this stuff doesn't taste good. I'm going to leave this plant alone. I'm going to go and find some other plant. But why do we wise humans do? We hide that uncomfortable taste with sugar and cream. Okay? The animals got it that this stuff is not good. You shouldn't touch it. But we go and drink this stuff, Now they make it sound like, the antioxidants, as if it's the only thing on nature that has antioxidants. You find antioxidants on every single vegetable and fruit. So don't fall for their marketing, trick, that, you need this because of your antioxidants and so forth. This stuff, has the negative effects of the caffeine and it can potentially cause health problems.
All right, one last question. All right. A couple more hands going up. All right, 1, 2, 3. Last 3. We better make it quick. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. I just want to ask about diabetes. When is the best time to get the accurate check on the blood glucose level?
That's right.
And then, yeah, that one.
What-
There were 2, but one is
That's
gone.
right. Well, the glucose varies throughout the day, but as a general rule, first thing before your breakfast, and be consistent, be consistent, so then you're gonna be getting a more accurate measurement. Sometimes if the night was not good and so forth, you're gonna notice actually that the glucose is gonna go higher and so forth. So that tells you, you better start working on your sleep patterns and routines and so forth to improve the quality of your sleep, because sleep does impact quite a bit the diabetes. So that's why first thing in the morning, that will be a good time. And record it. It's a good idea to record that, so when you go to your doctor, you can actually show him, look, this is what has been happening to me and so forth, and we can quickly see, a little bit the pattern, what's going on.
Okay, so first thing before breakfast.
Yeah,
Is that
before-
why the doctors opt for fasting?
What?
The doctors, they say fast in the night and then do it in the morning. Is that why?
Yeah. So I'm saying you take it while fasting before you eat your breakfast. Right. Take it and then you eat your breakfast.
Okay. And what is the average score to aim for?
That's right. Well, the thing is that I think on American numbers, you guys use the European numbers. I'll have to calculate it. But you want a fasting glucose of 100 and less, the American numbers. You need to transform that into the European system that you guys use here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks again, Doctor. I'm about to put every good SDA in this room on the edge of their seats. You mentioned cereals are not so good.
Yes.
Sanitarium Wheat Bix.
No, Wheat Bix is okay.
Yes.
Wheat Bix is actually okay. And eat it with some fruit, and that way you actually, control even further. So yeah, Wheat Bix is no problem. Now there's some Wheat Bix that they add all kinds of other things. That one is a little bit more questionable. But the good old, old recipe Wheat Bix, that's actually very good.
Thank you, Doctor, for this address on diabetes. Mostly our doctors, they'll say it's incurable. You can't reverse it. And instead, wherever you go in, there's a question of being given more medication than you started with. So I think this will go a long way in helping us I don't know whether, is it the big pharma that makes them think that this is incurable or not? I don't know.
Yeah, so you will see that as you start making these changes, if you're serious about it, you better start checking with your doctor, because your medication, you're going to have to start to make changes in your medication, because the fasting glucose is going to start coming down, your hemoglobin A1C is going to start coming down. So if you follow a plan like that Diabetes Undone, you will see the big change that is going to start happening in your fasting glucose and so forth. So to me, that's why the normal approach is very frustrating, because the patient is just going to get worse. We're going to have to add more medications, and the patient will continue to get worse, and more medication, and it's a never-ending cycle. Well, this lifestyle medicine approach, you actually bring solution to the problem. So that's the beauty of this, as we attack the problem from the root cause and bring it to an end.
I was wondering about fermented foods and vinegars. And
yes.
How do they fit in with the diet?
That's right. Yeah, vinegar, not the best thing for your diet. It's too acid. It actually, irritates quite a bit your stomach and your digestive tract. So yeah, we don't recommend that. And also that idea that you always need to have some fermented food, that's not necessarily true. That's in the case that you may have harmed your microbiota through too much medication and antibiotics and so forth. You may need it a little bit more. But then you just planted the seeds. You keep that through a high fiber diet. If you want to eat some fermented foods, yogurt would be a good option, not the one that comes from the dairy, but the one that comes from the plant. Today, there's many options in the marketplace.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you for your questions, everyone. We need some melatonin.
Amen.
So we're going to call it a night. I just want to let you know that we are planning to notify all those who have attended this seminar of some vegan cooking classes that will be coming up. So if you are interested, please make sure you register on the sheets outside there. Make sure you leave contact email, contact phone number, so that we can contact you as well and let you know when that. We're looking at kicking that off in May. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, can I invite you back tomorrow morning? Does anyone know what time? 9:30 a.m. and next presentation will be at 11 a.m. And then after lunch, Dr. Ramirez will do a final presentation for us at 2 p.m. Okay. Can I invite you to bow your heads with me as we close with a word of prayer? Gracious Father, thank you, Lord. Really, Father, you really do desire our best. I think of what your word says, Lord, when you brought the Israelites out of Egyptian slavery, and you told them as part of your covenant with them that you would lay none of the diseases of the Egyptians upon them. And you gave them a health message, Father. You told them what to eat and what not to eat. Father, we thank you, Father, that you care for us the way you do. Lord, may we always hide these things we learn in our heart, Lord, and carry it with us all our days. And so continue to bless us in this way, and may we be the examples to our family. Dr. Ramirez talked about what we do with our children in our homes as well. Lord, may we make the reforms that are necessary in that respect, and be the examples that you desire for us. So, Lord, dismiss us now. Keep us all safe as we travel home, and bring us back tomorrow to continue to enjoy this series. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.